'cause we're all the same. We're links in the chain.
Awesome. What's up, everyone? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're tuning in. This is Working It Out Across Generations. I'm one of your hosts, Justin.
And I'm Dr. Lynn, and we are so glad you're here.
Awesome. This is a show in which we talk about everyday conflicts, big and small, that add up to how we coexist. And we provide a generational perspective on some tools and resources that we can provide to get some resolution out there, right? And I think we have a very, very deep, very interpersonal conversation coming up for you right now. I think I'm also still at a loss for words, and I think a lot of you too will be. So go ahead.
Yeah, so, you heard the song, We Are Links in the Chain, and we truly believe that we really feel like we have to make each other's lives better. And sometimes it seems like it's really difficult because of all that you may be going through. So today's topic has got to touch you and inspire and motivate you to keep going. Today, we're talking about becoming a change maker in the midst of adversity. And we have a very special guest who is living this, Jeffrey Deskovic Esq, MA. And we want to welcome him to our show today. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about him, and then, of course, he's going to be able to add to the story. Jeffrey Deskovic Esq, MA, is the founder of the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which has freed 14 wrongfully convicted individuals. And here's the part I really love: help pass 9 laws, right? An advisory board member of the National Coalition Group. It could happen to you. Jeff sits on the Global Advisory Council of Restorative Justice International. We're all for that. Jeff is the co-owner of the Recharge Beyond the Bars re-entry game. Y'all got to get that. It's phenomenal, which facilitates formerly incarcerated people reconnect with friends and family. Jeff's motivation is he spent 16 years in prison from age 17 to 32 before being exonerated by DNA. A documentary short, Conviction, about his life after exoneration is available on Amazon Prime. You got to watch it, folks, because I watched it last night and it's still in me. Let's give a big welcome to Jeffrey Deskovic Esq.
What's up, Jeffrey? How you doing?
Unmute him.
I'm great. How are you all doing?
We're blessed, brother. We're blessed.
We're very blessed.
Here in your presence. Yeah. Seriously.
Ooh, goodness.
Yeah.
Yes. We'd love for you to tell everybody anything you want them to know up front about you before we get into some questions that we really want to ask you.
Sure. So I just wanted to expound just a slight tad on the intro, just in terms of my wrongful conviction, which was for a murder and rape. It happened back in 1990. I was arrested at 16, turned 17 by the time the trial got started. I got wrongfully convicted, even though the DNA didn't match me. That wrongful conviction was caused by coerced false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner, terrible public defender. I lost 7 appeals. I got turned down for parole, largely in part because I maintained my innocence rather than expressing remorse and taking responsibility. And the exoneration, of course, happened through further DNA testing through the DNA data bank, which not only affirmed the prior exculpatory result, but also identified the actual perpetrator, whose DNA was only in the data bank because left free while I was doing time for his crime. He killed a second victim just 3.5 years later, who was a school teacher and who had 2 children. All my charges were dismissed on actual innocence grounds. He was subsequently arrested and convicted, and it's just been a whirlwind of advocacy work. I define myself as an advocate, as an attorney whose backstory is that I was wrongfully imprisoned yes, I'm an exoneree, but I'm much more than that. And and I'm just trying to make a difference, helping people in the same position I was once in, working to prevent what happened to me from happening to others, and holding myself to the same standard as other lawyers, other advocates in the field who have not been wrongfully imprisoned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you are nothing but an embodiment of paying it forward, right? I think that we all go through things and we all learn from those things, right? But we live in such a world where we want to keep things for ourselves. We want to keep valuable information for ourselves. And, honestly, people can get stingy with, resources and all these other things, but you have completely immersed yourself into learning more about how what happened to you landed for you, putting that into words and really being able to speak for so many people out there who may not have the ability to even form the sentences that really are true here, right? Of that, I didn't do this, I'm maintaining my innocence, and really just that you see people for who they are. So I think what you do is beautiful, and I would love to get started with our first question, if that's
Yeah,
okay. You
yeah.
look like you want to say
I
something,
just
but
like just listening to you, just even in the intro, I just think about so many people would emerge from that in a place of wanting to just hurt other people for the pain that they'd been through. And for you, I just can't wait to hear more about how your experience in traveling through such a terrible experience. And so I'd love it if you could take us back to your childhood, your daily life before this happened to you.
So my life back then was there was my life after school, and there was my life in school. So in school, I was kind of quiet to myself. I didn't quite fit in. I went to Catholic school from grades 2 through 8, and
Mhm.
I decided to go to public school for high school. But I really wasn't that familiar with the kids there. I was kind of on the fringes of the society there, so I was kind of quiet, withdrawn, tight. At times I was picked on. I guess you could say I was a nerd, except that I was getting good grades, but I wouldn't consider that I was like in the upper echelon of grades either. All right. So that was my life in school. But my life after school was like 1,000% different. I grew up in an apartment complex in Peekskill. I would describe Peekskill as being middle class. It was ethnically diverse. There were a lot of kids that lived in apartment buildings and in the surrounding areas. And I was one of the main two kids where pretty much whatever I would suggest would usually be what we would do. If we're going to play Monopoly, we're going to play basketball, we're going to go swimming, we're going to go to the movies, we're going to play tackle football with no pads on the grass. You name it, we did it. But the point being, whatever activity I would, I was kind of like I was very athletic and energy based as a
Mm.
kid, and I was popular. But that was, again, that's my life after school. So we have that dichotomy.
right.
Yeah.
I want to also add part of my growing up as well was I was came from a single parent household. So I grew up with my mother. My grandmother lived with me, and she kind of took on both the role of the father and the mother.
Mhm.
So the role of the father in the sense that she was the disciplinarian, but also the role of the mother in the sense that my mother was the breadwinner. She was going to work, and so grandma was really in charge of my day, the day to day of my life. I have a brother who's 3.5 years younger than me.
Mhm.
So my father was never involved in my life in any aspect before I was even out of my mother's womb. He was trying to get out of financial responsibility,
Mhm.
by denying I was his. So all these factors that we're going over now will all come into play later on,
Mhm.
as we develop the story a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And speaking about, some of your friends and the what that life looked like for you before you went away, right? When if we start to move a little bit into, when you went away, right? Could you tell us a little bit about some of the support you had, right? What that might have looked like if support wasn't there, right? Because I can only imagine going from Monopoly and tackle football on the grass to, you know, being in the system is quite a jump, and I can only imagine that people out there don't have a lot of support, right, in these types of situations. So if you did, or didn't, what did that look like for you?
Sure. So, I mean, there was my life after the arrest. I mean, I was in the county jail for 35 days, and then I got bailed out. My mother had a longtime boyfriend at the time that was a respected businessman, so he had some assets, and he was willing to put up, his bank book and land from his mother that he had inherited. So I got bailed out, but I thought that I was going back to the life that I had before. But as I would quickly learn, and is apparent even now, there was never going to be any going back. I mean, I wasn't allowed to go back to the high school, because why would they allow me to go back to the high school while my case was pending? This was a high profile case. Virtually all of the coverage was from a guilt presumptive oriented perspective, which of course that narrative was all facilitated by, the police and prosecutor, and making statements by defense attorney just doing the traditional no comment. And it was all facilitated by news reports of a false confession. So I was a hated figure in Peekskill, and I felt like it was even dangerous to walk around. I mean, this was a small city, population approximately 25,000 people,
Wow.
and the whole city essentially shut down when the victim was found murdered and raped. Parents were bringing their kids right to school, picking them up after school. There were town hall meetings, safety tips, updates on investigation. So that was kind of the atmosphere there. And in terms of, so was your question limited to that, or are you also asking me about my time in prison also?
Well, your friends, right, that you had before, did friends stick
Well,
you,
they no, they
family?
Overall support. Yeah.
I got you. Okay, so no, I lost all of my friends except two, because their parents wouldn't allow them to play with me, because because of the newspaper reports and what I was arrested for. Really, it was my mother and grandmother supported me at that point. I had a couple of sets of aunts and uncles, but I mean, one of the aunts was, aunts and uncle just came a couple of times, but the other aunt. So it was really basically my mother, grandmother, aunt and uncle at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeffrey, I saw the documentary, and I don't know if you want to share just a little bit of how you were even approached. I mean, that piece of the story was just mind-blowing to me.
Sure. So the police interviewed many students in the high school in the course of their investigation, and some of them told the police they might want to speak with me. That's because I didn't quite fit in. So I got on their radar that way. And then I was a sensitive teenager, just my first brush with death, and I had an emotional reaction, which the police thought was suspicious since I barely knew the victim. She was in two of my classes as a freshman, one as a sophomore. I knew her name, she knew mine. That was really the extent of it. And then they got then an additional factor was they got a psychological profile from the NYPD, which purported to have the psychological characteristics of the perpetrator, and I had the misfortune of matching that, and so it was a reinforcing factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. And then they didn't really tell you, right, at first, why they were talking to you, approaching you?
Right. They were pretending that they needed my help. In reality, I was a suspect, but
Right.
they were pretending that they needed my help to solve the crime. Now, before I was a teenager, they thought about being a cop when I grew up, and so that appealed to me. And so all of my interactions with the police over the next 6 weeks, which took place without my mother being aware of it, it always had the dynamic that they'd start out talking to me like a suspect, and when they would push too hard and I would get frightened and I'd want to get away from them, then they switch it up, and Jeff as this junior detective helper theme was developed. So the kids won't talk freely around us, but they will around you. Let us know if you hear anything. Stop in from time to time. They would ask me opinion questions and congratulate me that my opinion was correct.
Wow.
So eventually they got me to agree to take a lie detector test. They said, look, we got some new information in the file. We want to share that with you. That's going to allow you to be even more helpful to us. But so the next day, rather than report to the high school, I went to the police station. So my grandmother and mother thought I was in school. Therefore, they didn't call around looking for me. They had no idea that anything was amiss. They drove me from Peekskill, cross county lines, 40 minutes away by car, bringing me to the town of Brewster, which was in Putnam County. So that meant I couldn't leave anymore on my own. I was totally dependent upon the police. And
Right.
I had no independent way of escape, didn't know where I was, had no money. The Putnam County Sheriff's investigator, he was dressed like a civilian. He never identified himself as law enforcement, never read me my rights. Um, he gave me a 4-page brochure which explained how the polygraph worked, but there was a lot of big words in it that I didn't understand. But I figured, well, I'm here to help the police, so what does this matter? Let's
Mhm.
just get on with it. There was no attorney present. They didn't give me anything to eat the entire time I was there. They put me in a small, from there, he put me in a small room. He gave me countless cups of coffee, which it seems clear the purpose of that was to get me nervous.
Mhm.
And then he literally wired me up to the polygraph machine. And then he launched his third degree tactics. He carried out what he testified to in court called GTC, get the confession.
Yeah.
So he invaded my personal space. He raised his voice at me. He kept asking me the same questions over and over again. And he kept that up for 6.5 to 7 hours. At the end, and my fears increasing in proportion to the time of the
Of course.
interrogation. And then finally he says, "What do you mean you didn't do it? You just told me through the test that you did. We just want you to verbally confirm it." That shot my fear through the roof even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then the officer pretended to be my friend. He came in the room and he said, "Look, they're going to harm you. I've been holding them off. I can't do this any longer. You got to help yourself. Look, just tell them what they want to hear. You can go home afterwards. You're not going to be arrested." Being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, I wasn't thinking about
Yes.
the long term. I was just concerned with my safety in the moment. I was in fear of my life. The fact that I didn't know where I was and no one else
Yeah.
did either loomed large in my mind. The push pull dynamic, on one hand, this possibility of harm, on the other, this false life preserver that he threw me. So I made up a story based on the information which they gave me in the course of the interrogation. By the time it was all said and done, I collapsed on the floor in a fetal position, crying uncontrollably. Obviously, I was arrested. The whole process was not videotaped, not audio taped, no signed confession, just the cop's word for it.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, when they later came to court, they left the threat and false promise out of their testimony.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So in the midst of
Mm.
just so many things not being carried out correctly and ethically, right? And all of what you're feeling, which was so valid, and in at least just the confusion of it all, right? As you said, like, I'm with the police, I haven't done anything, right? I'm figured I'm helping them. I want to be a cop, right? Like, this is maybe not cool, but I'm doing the right thing, right? In the midst of that, in the midst of the trial, in the midst of even conviction, right? What do you think helped you combat some of that anger, some of that anxiety, some of that confusion? What were some of the things you were telling yourself, or anything that you maybe have heard from someone else, right? Just what inspired you to not want to stay in that place, even though it was inevitable that these things were going to come up because of the environment that you were in?
Well, the couple sets of aunts and uncles and my mother, they all believed in the court system. So
Mm.
they all were telling me, well, you're going to be found not guilty. You didn't,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So I came to believe in that.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. And then the feelings. I mean, what were the feelings and how did you manage them, or did you manage them? Because you were 16, 17 by the time you went in,
Yeah,
right?
I was 17 by the time that I was at the trial. So the DNA didn't match me, and the court refused to dismiss the case. The prosecutor got the medical examiner to commit fraud. So he suddenly claimed, after the DNA didn't match me, that he remembered that he forgot that to document medical evidence that he claimed showed the victim had been promiscuous, which is what opened the door for the prosecutor to argue, well, that's how the DNA doesn't match you, and yet you committed the murder and rape. She was sleeping around. As a matter of fact, and then he mentioned another youth by name that he falsely said slept with the victim, and that was how they countered that. But he never tried to prove that. He never had a DNA test performed on that individual. He never called him as a witness. He simply made the unsupported argument to the jury. My public defender essentially didn't defend me. That's how he got away with that. So he never explained to the jury the significance of the DNA not matching me, never used that to argue that proved the confession was coerced and false. Literally, literally never asked a single question of the medical examiner, rarely met with me, always was shutting me up when I was trying to explain to him that I was innocent and what happened in the interrogation room. In terms of the confession, sometimes he argued to the jury the confession never happened at all. At other times he argued it did happen, but it was coerced. And at still other times he was arguing it was a false confession. So by taking a let's just throw mud against the wall and see what sticks type of
Yeah.
approach, he had to have been standing there with no credibility at all in front of the jury. He should have never represented me because of a
No.
conflict of interest. That other youth that the prosecutor was falsely saying had slept with the victim was represented by another member of that same public defender office, and specifically by the lawyer who was supposed to be supervising him on my case.
Mm.
And that conflict prevented the defense from asking him to give a sample. It prevented the defense from calling him as a witness. The evidence, including the victim's bra, had been entered into evidence by the prosecutor. The jury asked to see it. That was when the judge said, "Well, the evidence was left in the courtroom over the weekend, and the custodians, the janitors, they thought it was garbage, so they threw it out. So it's not available anymore." And that was important because one of the statements they coerced out of me was I said that I ripped her bra off. And there's some bras you can't rip off by the way it's made. So when they asked to see that, and for that suddenly not to be available, I feel like that was an important factor. The judge repeatedly allowed the prosecutor to tell the jury that I failed the polygraph when I denied committing the crime. So that was certainly prejudicial. And lastly, on the third day of the jury deliberation, they sent out a note asking, well, if we can't come up with a verdict, we'll be kept sequestered over the Christmas holiday. And the judge said yes. So I learned many years later at that point it was 11-1 for a conviction. It was a holdout juror, but they were pressuring the holdout. And then when they got that note back, that really ratcheted it up, and no one, including him, wanted to be stuck there over the Christmas holiday. So he switched his vote based on that, and I was convicted. The judge gave me a 15 to life sentence because I had been charged, tried, and sentenced as an adult. And he sentenced me even though he said, maybe you are innocent. Instead of overturning the conviction, he sentenced me because that was the easier thing to do.
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to ask the next question because I'm in shock. I mean, yeah. Do you mind?
No problem. Yeah. That's something, man. So you had said earlier that you had wanted to be a police officer, right? That was something that you had wanted to aspire to do. And I imagine for you, right, like you wanted to help people, right? So that's something that was always a part of you. In the midst of all of this happening, right, as I love that you said, like so many people would take what's happening in this type of situation and take that hurt and anger, rightfully so, but turn it into something unhealthy, something that's not being put into helping other people. When did you realize that even in this, like, I still want to help people. I still want to be there for people. I still am, a positive person who has a positive message to put out there. Like, I know at some point that must have wavered in your mind just based off of what was happening. But when did that kind of snap back into reality for you, being that is a part of who you are?
Well, during the run up to the trial and during the trial, I kind of switched my focus and I didn't aspire any longer to be a police officer. I decided I wanted to help people just as a lawyer. Of course, I thought I was going to be acquitted and, I would just pursue the education and the training and credentials then. But that having been said, I think the first thing of trying to be positive, happened, while I was in prison. I didn't waste my time in prison, right? So I got GED, I got associates, I completed a year towards the bachelor's before funding was cut. I took a class on typing. I did general business, which pertains to different applications of the computer in a workforce setting. I took computer repair. I did the plumbing class. I became a painter's helper. I took a class on how adults learn and worked as a teacher's aide for a year and a half. I used to go to the law library to learn the law. From 98 to 2006, I read 3 or 4 nonfiction books a week. So I was determined that I was going to use my time in prison towards something positive. And around 2000, 2004, I want to say 2004, 2005, somewhere in there. But I remember just feeling just totally stressed out. My appeals had all been over after 11 years. The only way back into court when that happens is if you can find some previously unknown evidence of innocence. So I had no money to hire an investigator or a lawyer, hence a letter writing campaign trying to find some pro bono help. 4 years of writing letters, rarely getting responses other than the occasional no, getting turned down for parole, largely, like I said, because of maintaining my innocence.
Yeah.
So I remember one day, so with all that, and I remember just thinking, man, if I ever get out of here, I'm going to become a lawyer and I'm going to help exonerate other people. But that was almost like tantamount to like whistling in the dark, that you're not afraid as you walk through the cemetery at midnight. I mean, the odds of that seeming to happen, seem to be little slim to none. But I remember having that thought, and when I spoke at the press conference, I mean, everything I had ever wanted to say but could never get anybody to hear, it all came out. And just when I thought I was finishing up, another topic occurred, and another topic occurred. Before it was all said and done, I had spoke for about 2.5 hours, and and then a light bulb kind of went off. I thought, I could be part of the innocence movement without necessarily being a lawyer. And so I just decided to start speaking, and I becoming a writer at a weekly paper and doing media interviews and meeting with the electeds. I did that for 5 years. Got the scholarship from Mercy College, which is now Mercy University. Got the bachelor's degree. Didn't get into law school. Got the master's degree. Wrote the thesis on wrongful conviction cause and reform because I thought that the credential would make me a better advocate. Finally got some compensation. Started the organization. Then I decided, look, I'm tired of sitting in the front row at the courtroom. I want to sit at the defense table. I want to represent some of the clients. I want to make some of the arguments. Hence, going to law school, becoming a lawyer. So all those are different inflection points in response to the question about when I decided I wanted to help people.
Sure.
Yeah, wow. And you talked about, you touched on your foundation. We'd love to hear about your foundation and the work that you are doing and have accomplished.
Sure. So in terms of accomplishments, we have been able to free 14 people, help pass 3 laws, and then another 6 as part of a coalition group. It could happen to you. So in the aggregate, 9 laws. In terms of at present, so we have 13 active cases right now, and I'm co-counsel in 9 of them. Some of them predate my law license that I've just entered the cases, and others are totally new cases. We're doing policy work in New York, so coerced false confessions have caused wrongful convictions in 29% of the DNA-proven wrongful convictions. So we're advocating for the passage of a law that would mandate that the police record all custodial interrogations. So they have to record now, but there's exceptions for homicide, sex offenses, drug cases. So we want to get rid of the exceptions. We want to ban the police from lying in the course of interrogations. I mean, recognizing that that's inherently coercive, and supporting the Youth Interrogation Act, which is a bill which, if passed, would give 16, 17-year-olds and kids younger a right to counsel. So you would have to speak to a lawyer to explain your rights to you before you could then decide if you want to waive them or not. Right. In view of the fact that kids, those age, I certainly never understood what my rights meant. And every time they came to that portion of the Miranda warnings where it said anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, my mind went to what I saw on TV and different civil court contexts. And I remember thinking to myself, court, what are you talking about? We're not going to court. Yeah. So those 3 bills in Pennsylvania, we're advocating for the passage of exoneree compensation. So that's one of 12 states that does not compensate exonerees. So if I had been exonerated there, I wouldn't have gotten anything from the state. Right. And then in California, we're working on building support for a oversight commission for prosecutors. We were able to help pass the Commission on Prosecutor Conduct in New York. It was a landmark bill, meaning the first one in the country. So we're trying to pass that in California with the hope that could set a chain reaction where other states would look at passing that bill. So that's what we're up to now. We do participate in training sessions. At times we're invited to speak either at police academy, sometimes district attorney offices, sometimes in front of judicial gatherings. So
Yeah.
working with training rather than demonizing actors in the
Right.
justice system,
Hmm.
keeping it 100 in terms of, look, this is what happened in my case. This is what goes on every day. Nonetheless, not everyone in your profession is bad. And look, here's the knowledge that I can share with you. And that was what the whole theory of, getting a master's degree and writing the thesis on wrongful conviction, cause, and reform. I wanted to be able to speak about with some authority about more than just my case or the issues that were in my case. So I'm able to share knowledge of issues leading to wrongful conviction above and beyond what what happened in
Yeah.
in my case. So we do those things, and we do media and new media interviews, and work doing some work national and international.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I can imagine with all of that, and as liberating as it can be, there still has to be challenges. There still has to be conflict, right? So, what would you say is your biggest daily challenge in this work that you have to deal with, whether it's interpersonal within you, or just stuff that you're seeing and having to hear about, and the way that you got to show up for people? What would you say is your biggest daily challenge in your work?
So I think that I feel like there's too many things to do. We're a small operation.
Hmm.
Our budget averages between 150 to $200,000, which is really not a lot of money. When you think about how much it costs to do
Yeah.
cases. So we're operating on a shoestring, and so not having enough funding to then have other lawyers or additional paralegals, investigator on staff, and instead just everybody overloaded and trying to corral people to do one thing or another for free rather than which ends up dragging things out rather
Right.
than so what probably should be done in a year might take maybe 2 or 3 years. So that part of it is frustrating. The funding aspect of it, and a lot of organizations are there's a lot of money changing hands in the nonprofit space, and as far as I can tell, a lot of it just is going for rabble rousing in the street where there's no clear cut ask. There
Right.
are
Mm.
no results that are given in the end. You
Beautiful.
can't point to anybody and say, well, this person is free as a result of this, or these laws, these policy changes are different. So that part of it is that part of it's frustrating on an interpersonal level. I have found it hard to put my life back together again, just on a social, just the social aspect of it. Just to find people where I have like 4 or 5 different things in common, so we can change genres of activity. I'm kind of eclectic. I don't like to keep repeating things. I like to
Mhm.
do many different things.
Yeah.
And I'm 50, but I feel like I'm 26, 27.
Yeah.
But I still want to throw a ball around. I still want to,
Yeah.
let's go with the bumper cars. And
Mhm.
who is that person to call? And we're gonna get like 3, 4, 5, 6 people together, and we're gonna play pickup games like I did at my youth. Or we're gonna go to the amusement park, or we're gonna go to different places, and you know, doing new activities, and new experiences, trying new food, and going to new places and travel. So I found it difficult to put that part because most of the people my age, they're at a different stage in life. They've done those things already. They have full lives already. There's not really a lot of space for me to be much more than anything than somebody on a peripheral. And I think that there's a general lack also. I find a lot of people, they're really not committed to living a balanced life. So like I don't think not everything of the prison was bad. So one way, like doing recreation, they give us recreation every other night from like 7 to 10. So I
Yeah.
don't see why, by like 5, 6, or even 7, I'm ready to go to rec, metaphorically.
Yeah.
Call
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody and go and do this or that, and tomorrow we'll be here and we'll deal with tomorrow's activities. But it feels like a lot of people are just after work they want to come home, they want to eat something, watch an hour of TV maybe, and go to sleep, wash,
Mhm.
rinse, repeat. But I need more than that, and so
Mhm.
it's been a challenge finding people again that want to do some of the same things that I do too. Because I mean, we can get together, but then if there's nothing to do in common, it gets kind of boring. It gets kind of old, kind of quickly.
Yeah.
for sure.
Wow.
Thank you for that.
Yes. And something that you've done with that energy is you created a game, right? I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, so I co-own Recharge Beyond the Bars reentry game. The creator of it was Leslie Robinson, a therapist. So she came to me with the game completed, and she asked me to invest some money into it, and that was my way of trying to give back to the prison population. I mean, there were people that played a key role for me at times, but just like in a limited way. Like one old timer suggested that I look, you got to go to a law library and learn your case, and another, you can't just rely on lawyers. And another person suggested, hey, you go to law school. And another person pull my code and teach me about the prison survival tactics and what things to do and not do, and things like that. So it's not like it was like anybody from like a cohort fashion over 15 years. It was more than just for a particular key piece of advice or another, but so my way of trying to appreciate that was investing into the game. There's an in prison version, long sentence version of it, and then there's afterwards, and it has icebreaker questions. And I remember just reflecting on my own difficulty, trying to reestablish connections with my extended family, the overwhelming majority of whom never came to see me. The few that did come to see me, it was often 3-4 years interspersed. The only consistent visitor I had was my mother, but then in the last 5-6 years, I would be lucky if I saw her once every 6 months. My brother came 3 times in 16 years, not at all in the last decade. And so when I would meet up with them, it was kind of awkward. I knew who they were from memories when I was younger, but I was a different person. So were they. And as my brother put it, look, I don't know what to say. I don't know what not to say. I don't know what to ask. I don't know what not to ask. And so when I read the questions that Leslie had developed, in consultation with some formerly incarcerated people, it just kind of spoke to me. So there's gear questions that only somebody formerly incarcerated would answer. Like an example of that would be, how are you changed now? How are you different now versus before? Then so while only people formerly incarcerated would answer the gear questions, everybody else can respond to the responses that are given. There's general questions for everybody. And lastly, there's group activities. There's like a puzzle piece in front of it. And so it comes with everything you need to play. It has pencils, paper. So some of the group activity questions involves drawing. And so it removes the awkwardness by stepping in the middle and just providing the icebreaker questions. There's what we call appreciation chips, so everyone gets 7 chips. And so if somebody really puts something into the answer, you can affirm or reinforce them by giving an extra. You give a chip or several chips, whatever you feel inclined. And if they kind of mail in an answer and not put much in, you don't have to give them anything. And it does draw people closer, and I felt more understood and understanding other people when I played the game. So hence, investing into the game as a way of giving back. And it can be used and played not just by formerly incarcerated people and their friends and their family, but also organizations that facilitate formerly incarcerated people in reintegrating in general. So they use the questions sometimes in the course of group dynamics, and entities that do journaling, they use the questions as a stimulus, what people would journal about. So yeah, that's what the game is about. Like I wrote in the inside of there's a nice quote for me on the cover of it. And there's a little bit of my history on the inside tin. And like I mentioned when I wrote there, I just wish the game was available when I originally was released.
Okay. Thank you.
And just putting this up here for everyone at home. If you want to get a copy of this game, the link is right here. We've also got the rest of Jeffrey's links, but we're not done here just yet. There's still a little more that we need to get out here, but just want to throw that up. I'll make sure I put it back up in a few more minutes. But Jeffrey, we got our last question before we ask you to, just leave our viewers with whatever you want to leave them with, and we'll plug all your socials. But considering what you've been through, what you've done to get to the place that you're in to help people and put it forward and pay it forward, right? We know that not everyone can do that, right? I think I'm very much an optimist, though. I think everyone wants to, at some point, channel that energy into something healthy, right? But for a lot of people, it's very hard to see that through, right? So, what tips or love, advice, whatever, would you give to anyone who's thinking of, going in that harming others direction because it was done to them, and channeling that energy into something good? What tips or anything would you say to them right now?
I would say to them, it don't be angry, because look, if you've already lost a lot. Like I said this to myself, look, I've already lost so much already. Why would I want to in effect lose the rest of my life?
Mm.
I want to enjoy my life as much as I can. I can't do that if I'm simultaneously angry and bitter. It's not like I'm affecting people. If I was to be angry or bitter, I would really be the only loser in that scenario. And the vehicle that allows me to actualize that is I take the energy that I feel and channel it into the advocacy work. And so I do make sense of what happened to me in a kaleidoscopic type of way. I know that I'm doing the type of work I'm supposed to be doing in the world. And with that, I have a sense of inner peace. And I would encourage people that they could look at things in that way as well. I do have a couple of other quick tips. I enjoy the small things. So, I enjoy just, feeling the fresh air on my face. I enjoy feeling the sun. I like being able to be outside, sit outside, and when it's dark, or the, freedom of movement, or, the freedom and options that being free brings. So I know a lot of us, including me, I used to take that for granted before I lost my freedom. So I would encourage people to try to enjoy the small things. There's so many things out there in life. I mean, I mentioned, new things. I mean, that's why I like to do new activities, new experiences, try new food, go new places, travel. To me, that's part of in experiencing the world. I do have the formula that I thought about, when I reflected on my life as a whole, and everything that I've been through and how I finally arrived at, where I am. I think it can be boiled down into this formula that you have a goal and you have a realistic plan. So meaning you should be able to look at it 3 or 4 different ways and say to yourself, well, yeah, I can see how this could work. Because who wants to carry out a plan that you don't think has a chance of being
Right.
successful? That's kind of the pits, right? Then, don't be afraid of hard work. Like I'm not a pie in the sky person. I don't think everything's going to be okay just because. I think you have to work really, really hard, put yourself in a position, for a miracle to then happen, or an unexpected door to open, or someone to help you at that point. And then no excuses. So there might be reasons why something is hard, sure, or harder, but no reason why you can't accomplish it, but you just have to, in sports analogy, you have to leave it all out on the field.
Yes.
Lastly, never give up. When I get to the point where, I feel like I can't go on anymore, I just say to myself, this might be the key moment right here. I might be on the verge of a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't go on no more, it's not going to happen. So even though I can't go on anymore, I'm going to anyway, just to see what happens on the other side.
I love that.
And then when you cross that bridge, you got to reach back.
Yeah.
And help people in the same position. And in my 18 years of freedom, I've seen this formula be applied to people far beyond just situations of wrongful imprisonment. Like I've seen formerly incarcerated people work with at-risk youth, with the goal being, let's divert you from a life of crime. Let's divert you from a path that's likely to lead to you being in prison. I've seen homeless people who used to be homeless, work with the homeless population. I've seen people that used to be drug addicts that now work with people that have drug problems. I've seen women that used to were previously victims of domestic abuse that are now working with that population. I've seen family members whose loved ones have been killed or otherwise affected by crime, and now they're engaging in advocacy work. So the most extreme situation. I mean, I even saw once I I was in Las Vegas, and I just happened to be aware of this. Excuse me, I was in Utah, and I just happened to be aware that this event was taking place. So I went and checked it out just as an audience member. This lady had been rescued. She previously had been sexually trafficked,
Mhm.
and she had started a nonprofit organization that raised money to give to the entities that are directly working on freeing people that are currently being sexually trafficked. So I
Yeah.
know that this can be applied universally. I mean, if someone's been just discriminated against, they can apply there as well. So any of these extreme, difficult life things, and even much situations less than that, but nonetheless, that's a challenge. So.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, Jeffrey, could talk to you for hours, but looking looking to make sure that everybody can really be in touch with you. I'm just wondering, how can people assist with what you are doing?
Sure. So in terms of how people can reach me, there is the website www.deskovic.org, Deskovic. There is a web form there that people can use to email me. We're on social media, so Instagram, Deskovic Foundation, on Facebook, Jeffrey Deskovic. I have my personal page, which is public. I have my public figure page, so I have more people than what I can have as friends there. So I copy things over. The foundation has its own Facebook page as well. I'm on LinkedIn. In terms of how people can assist, well, if you're listening out there and you either have a podcast or you know someone that does, or you know someone that's in the media, certainly giving us a mention. If you work in a corporate setting and the corporation engages in corporate philanthropy, put us on their radars. Suggest that if some of the people or people of capacity. I mean, again, I would love to just have a conversation with people.
Mhm.
That's my biggest challenge as somebody running a nonprofit organization. I kind of went from worst to first artificially somewhat, just through means of the lawsuit, rather than I didn't make it in business 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I didn't hit on this game-changing idea that changed the world, which I was able to monetize simultaneously.
Right.
So I need people who can connect me to people of capacity. And it's a soft sell. Here's who I am. Here's my credentials. Here's my body of work. Here's what the organization's done. Here's what we could do if we were able to have more funds. Here's the metrics that we could be measured by. And is this something that appeals to you? So I just need someone who can introduce me to people that way. So if there are people who are listening, and people of capacity, we don't have any celebrity spokespeople yet, or people that have a much larger following than I am. That's the way. Political parties, both parties are able to raise hundreds of millions of dollars in what they refer to as small dollar donations. Why not for justice reform? Why not for freeing innocent people? So we do have the website, which you had put it up a moment or two ago. The crowdfunding site Patreon, which is for people that are willing to be recurring monthly donors. I mean, imagine if there were 25,000 people that were willing to donate $3 to $5 a month on a recurring monthly basis as their way of participating in freeing innocent people. That would give us close to $1 million. We would be able to hire additional attorneys, paralegals, investigators. I work 50, 60 hours a week as pro bono. None of the money would make its way into my pocket under any line of reasoning. It would all go 100% for the mission, what we're doing. This isn't about me anymore. I'm free. I'm a lawyer. I have the legal education. I have whatever I have from compensation. So I kind of doubt that I ever would be wrongfully imprisoned again. So It's not about me. It's about the men and women that I metaphorically left behind.
Yeah, beautiful.
I'd love to have a chapter of the organization in each state and ultimately in each country. I really see this as a worldwide issue in countries where we get all about wrongful conviction is because no one's being exonerated there. So, but that's all going to be when we, get the public support that we need. So if you're out there, if you're able to help in any way, if the skill set that you have can be applied to a nonprofit setting, that's certainly, we certainly need that as well.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely. I just want to make sure that you do know that people are seeing this, people are showing love. Just throw a couple of comments up for you. We've got Andrea, who's in my mom's particular network, but she's saying good afternoon, powerful story. Melissa St. Clair, who's also a member of one of our groups outside of
And
here.
always watching the show.
Always watching the show. God bless the work you're doing. I mean, that's an understatement for what any of us could say about your commitment to the work that you're doing. And it really is just absolutely amazing. So.
Yes, and thank you, as Melissa said, thank you for sharing your story and revealing and retelling the events. That could not be easy. I tell you, it was not easy for me hearing it, and I'm just so grateful that you said yes to our invitation here. And please, I know we're going to stay connected because there are some things that we're going to want to do with you as well. But folks, if you're out there and you can assist in any way, please be in contact. You know where to also tune in to see us live. You can E360 TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV on your actual television sets. Check us out at YouTube, subscribe, like, share our Facebook page, all of that. Working It Out TV show. Thank you, Justin. I think you really were powerful today, and just the way that you worded the questions, and Jeffrey, just sensational. And anything we can do, we will do to promote and help. And as you all know out there, we always end in the same way. Thank you for tuning in. And we believe that conflict is here to teach us something about ourselves. So go out and find out what that is.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, well, Dr. Lynn, Mom, whatever. And just, it was such an honor to be here. And I'm so excited to keep working with you, man. Seriously. And please, everyone, tap in. This is a real fight, and this is the right guy leading the charge. So we'll see you soon. This was Working It Out, Across Generations. And thanks for tuning in.
Mm-hmm.